A billionaire devastated by the loss of his wife finds unexpected comfort when a humble young girl invites him to dance. This innocent gesture unleashes a wave of revenge, injustice, and shocking revelations. But it is precisely this unlikely connection that changes destinies and exposes truths before the city's elite. The sun was setting over Park Avenue as Arthur Sterling watched the city from the panoramic window of his top-floor office. At 55, he was at the helm of one of the largest business conglomerates in the United States, with investments ranging from civil construction to cutting-edge technology. His fortune was incalculable, but his gaze, always distant, carried a melancholy that no amount of money could erase. It had been 3 years since Helena, his wife, had passed away after a long battle with a degenerative disease. With her, the last spark of life that inhabited the businessman's heart was also gone. All that remained was a mechanical existence, divided between meetings, signing donation checks, and sleepless nights in his mansion on the Upper East Side, one of New York's most exclusive neighborhoods. "Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Collins from the Foundation is on the line. She's insisting on confirming your attendance at the St. Jude's Academy Charity Ball tomorrow night," announced Claudia, his secretary, for the 3rd time that day. Arthur sighed, adjusting the gold watch on his wrist. "Tell her yes, I'll be there. Just for the check presentation," he replied without emotion, like someone confirming a dentist appointment. The Sterling Foundation, created in memory of Helena, funded educational projects across the country. It was the only legacy Arthur truly cherished, although he avoided the public appearances the role required as much as possible. But this time, there was no escape. The annual ball at St. Jude's Academy, attended by the children of New York's elite, was an event that combined charity and social ostentation. As the main donor for the new library, his presence was practically mandatory. On the other side of the city, in the Bronx, Louisa Evans was finishing sewing a light pink dress for her daughter, Sophia. At 35, Louisa worked as a housekeeper in the mansion of Regina Van Aster, the president of the St. Jude's Academy Parent-Teacher Association and one of the most influential women in New York's high society social circle. "Stay still, honey. I just need to adjust the hem," Louisa said with pins in her mouth, kneeling before little Sophia, who couldn't contain her excitement. "Grandpa would have loved to see me dance, wouldn't he, Mom?" asked the 10-year-old girl, her brown eyes shining with anticipation. Louisa smiled tenderly. Her father, Sebastian Evans, had been a respected sergeant in the U.S. Army, decorated for acts of bravery during humanitarian missions. Despite the opportunities his fame could have afforded him, he chose to live with simplicity and integrity, values he passed on to his daughter and granddaughter before he passed away. "He would have, my love. He always said you had rhythm in your blood," she replied, fondly remembering her father. The school's spring ball was a traditional event where students, parents, and benefactors gathered to celebrate the end of the semester. Although Sophia didn't study there, she attended the local public school. She was allowed to accompany her mother, who would be working as part of the support staff hired, especially for the occasion. On the night of the event, the ballroom of St. Jude's Academy sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Elegantly decorated tables with fresh flower arrangements surrounded the dance floor, where teenagers in formal attire enjoyed themselves to the sound of a live band. In strategic corners, adults from New York's high society chatted about business, politics, and the latest gossip. Arthur arrived promptly at 8, wearing an impeccable navy blue Italian suit. He briefly greeted the headmaster and some members of the Foundation's board, presented the symbolic check for the construction of the new library, and retreated to a corner near the bar, where he hoped to go unnoticed until he could leave without drawing attention. From his privileged spot, he observed the frivolity around him with a mixture of boredom and discomfort. The exaggerated laughter, the superficial comments, the calculated glances, it all seemed like a grand performance, one he himself had been a part of once, when Helena was by his side and life still made sense. Sophia was helping her mother in the pantry, arranging small desserts on trays. She wore the simple pink dress sewn with so much care, and her curly hair was tied in 2 side braids, adorned with ribbons that matched her dress. "Stay here, Sophia. Don't leave the pantry," Louisa advised as she left with a tray of canapés to serve the guests. But the girl's curiosity got the better of her, As soon as her mother was away, Sophia slipped into the main ballroom, mesmerized by the lights, the music, and the elegant clothes. Walking among the guests, she reached the edge of the dance floor where she watched in fascination as couples twirled to the sound of a waltz. It was then that her gaze met the solitary figure of Arthur, standing by the bar with an untouched glass of whiskey in his hand. There was something about that man with his rigid posture and lost look that caught the girl's attention, a deep sadness, similar to what she herself had felt when her grandfather passed away. Without a second thought, driven by a courage her grandfather had always praised, Sophia crossed the ballroom towards the businessman. She stopped in front of him, straightened her dress, and with a clear, determined voice said, "Would you like to dance with me, sir?" Arthur looked down, surprised by the unexpected approach. He saw a little girl with tan skin and expressive eyes, who was looking at him with a mixture of hope and determination. "Me?" he asked, confused. "Yes, sir. My grandpa used to say you should never leave anyone alone at a party," Sophia replied simply. "And you look very lonely." Something about that childlike observation, so direct and true, touched Arthur in a way he hadn't felt in years. For a brief moment, the mask of indifference he wore as protection against the world crumbled, revealing a hesitant smile. "I don't know if that would be appropriate," he began, looking around. "Why not?" Sophia insisted. "It's just one dance. I know the steps my grandpa taught me. I can show you." Across the ballroom, Regina Van Aster watched the scene with growing indignation. She immediately recognized Sophia as her housekeeper's daughter and couldn't believe what she was seeing. A girl from the outer boroughs, a maid's daughter approaching one of the most powerful men in the country. "Doesn't that girl have any manners?" she commented to a friend, raising a glass of champagne to her red-painted lips. "I'm going to have a serious talk with Louisa tomorrow." Oblivious to the criticism, Sophia extended her hand to Arthur, who, after a moment of hesitation, accepted it. Together, they made their way to the dance floor, drawing curious glances and some whispers from the guests. The band, sensing the unusual moment, began to play a softer melody. In the center of the ballroom, little Sophia guided the powerful businessman's steps with surprising naturalness. Arthur, initially embarrassed, soon let himself be carried away by the moment. For the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than the emptiness that inhabited his chest, an unexpected lightness, a spark of genuine joy. "What's your name?" he asked as they twirled gently. "Sophia Evans, sir. And yours?" "Arthur Sterling." "That's a long name," she observed with a crystal-clear laugh. "Can I just call you Arthur?" He nodded, surprised at himself for not minding the little girl's informality. Somehow this impromptu dance with a strange child was becoming the most authentic moment he had lived in years. Louisa, returning to the pantry and not finding her daughter, went looking for her, worried. When she finally spotted her in the middle of the ballroom, dancing with a distinguished gentleman she didn't immediately recognize, her heart nearly stopped. She quickly made her way through the guests to get her daughter, fearing that Sophia was bothering someone important. That's when her eyes met those of Regina, her employer, watching the scene with an expression she knew well, a mixture of contempt and contained anger. In that instant, Louisa knew that this night somehow would change their lives forever. If this story has interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear in your life. The morning after the ball, the first rays of sun touched Arthur Sterling's penthouse apartment. For the first time in years, the businessman had slept without the aid of medication. In his mind, Sophia's sincere smile still echoed like a persistent melody. Something about that child had pierced the bubble of isolation he had lived in since Helena's passing. During breakfast, served promptly at 7 o'clock, Arthur surprised his butler by asking for the newspapers, a habit he had abandoned long ago. As he flipped through the pages, his cell phone rang. It was Vincent Miles, his head of personal security and a trusted confidant for over 2 decades. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. I received your message. What do you need?" Arthur hesitated for a moment, wondering if he was being impulsive or even inappropriate. But something inside him needed to know more about that little girl and her family. "I want information on a girl named Sophia Evans. She danced with me yesterday at the St. Jude's Academy Ball. She must be about 10. I want to know where she lives, with whom. the family's situation. Be discreet, Vincent. In the Upper East Side, the morning at the Van Aster mansion began with the usual ritual. Regina, impeccably dressed even for a day at home, sipped her herbal tea while reviewing the week's social calendar. Louisa had arrived promptly at 6:30 as usual, and was now tidying the kitchen after preparing her employer's breakfast. The heavy silence that had hung in the air since Louisa's arrival was broken by the metallic sound of the teacup being placed with excessive force on its porcelain saucer. "Louisa, come here." Regina's voice was cold and controlled, but with a note of threat the housekeeper knew well. "Yes, ma'am," Louisa replied, wiping her hands on her apron before presenting herself in the living room. "I want you to explain what your daughter was doing yesterday, dancing with Arthur Sterling in the middle of the main ballroom." The tone left no doubt. This was not a simple question, but an accusation. "Ma'am, I apologize. Sophia was supposed to stay in the pantry, but she slipped away when I wasn't looking. She didn't mean to bother anyone," Louisa explained, feeling her hands tremble slightly. "Bother?" Regina laughed without humor. "Do you have any idea who Arthur Sterling is? One of the most powerful men in this country. He is not someone to be approached by any child, much less a housekeeper's daughter." The words hit Louisa like slaps, but she maintained her composure, years of practice hiding her emotions in the face of subtle and not so subtle humiliations. "I beg your pardon, ma'am, it won't happen again." Regina stood up, adjusting her pearl necklace with a studied gesture. "You know, Louisa, I always believed you were different, more aware of your place. I'm disappointed." She paused dramatically. "Now go to my room and tidy my dresser. The silver picture frame on it needs to be cleaned with special care." In their modest apartment in the Bronx, Sophia was getting ready for school, still ecstatic with memories of the previous night. "Mom, did you see how well Mr. Arthur danced? He said he had forgotten how to dance," she commented excitedly while tying her hair. "Do you think I'll see him again someday?" Mrs. Gable, a neighbor who looked after Sophia while Louisa worked, smiled at the girl's excitement. "The world works in mysterious ways, little one. Who knows? Now let's go, or you'll be late." At the Sterling Enterprises office, Arthur was reviewing some contracts when Vincent entered, discreet as always with a folder under his arm. "Sir, I have the information you requested." Arthur pointed to the chair in front of him, suddenly anxious. "Sophia Evans, 10 years old, a student at Paulo Freire Municipal School. Lives with her mother, Louisa Evans, 35, a housekeeper at the residence of Regina Van Aster in the Upper East Side. The father is absent, never acknowledged paternity. The family lives in a small apartment in the Bronx. The maternal grandfather, Sebastian Evans, was an army sergeant, deceased 2 years ago." Vincent paused before continuing. "The interesting part, sir, is Sergeant Sebastian's record. He was decorated for bravery in humanitarian missions in Africa and Haiti. He saved dozens of civilians during a rescue operation after an earthquake. He refused promotions and financial benefits several times, preferring to remain a career sergeant. He was known for his unshakable integrity." Arthur listened with growing interest, something unusual for someone who generally showed little emotion about any matter. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Their financial situation is difficult. The rent is 2 months overdue. The girl attends ballet classes at a local NGO. The mother has worked for Mrs. Van Aster for 5 years, 6 days a week." Arthur nodded, dismissing Vincent with a gesture. He spent long minutes contemplating the folder on his desk, feeling strangely connected to this family he didn't even know. There was something in little Sophia's attitude that reminded him of the purity and spontaneity Helena had always valued. At the Van Aster mansion, the day was proceeding normally until a scream echoed down the second-floor hallway. "Louisa, come here immediately!" The housekeeper ran to the master bedroom where she found Regina standing by the dresser, her face contorted in a furious expression. "What is it, ma'am?" "Don't play dumb," Regina accused, pointing at the dresser. "Where is my silver picture frame, the one that belonged to my grandmother?" Louisa looked confused at the empty space where the object usually stood. "It was there when I tidied the room earlier, ma'am. I cleaned it as you asked." "Liar!" Regina raised her voice. "I've suspected for some time. Small objects disappearing, things out of place. I thought I might be mistaken, but now I'm sure." Louisa's blood ran cold as she understood the insinuation. "Ma'am, I would never take something that doesn't belong to me. In 5 years working here, 5 years of opportunities to observe where I keep my valuables, Regina interrupted. I suppose you saw the picture frame, remembered it was solid silver, and decided it was worth the risk. No, ma'am, please, Louisa's voice trembled. It must be somewhere in the house. I can help you look. Regina smiled cruelly. That won't be necessary. I've already called the police. Louisa's world collapsed. She knew she was innocent, but she also knew how powerful Regina Van Aster was. Her word against that of one of the most influential women in New York's high society. Please, ma'am, I have a young daughter. I've never taken anything of yours. There must be a mistake. The mistake was mine for trusting you, Regina retorted, walking to the door. Gather your things and get out of my house. Your final payment will be withheld until the object appears, and you should be grateful I'm not pressing charges. 40 minutes later, Louisa was walking down a street in the Upper East Side with a bag containing her personal belongings, her face streaked with silent tears. 5 years of work ended with a false accusation. No references, no final pay, no notice. How would she pay the overdue rent? How would she buy food for Sophia? In her pocket, her cell phone vibrated. It was Mrs. Gable. Louisa, dear, I'm worried. There's a man downstairs in the building asking for you. He said he's from Mr. Arthur Sterling's security. What's going on? Louisa's heart pounded. What could the businessman want with her? Was it possible that Mrs. Van Aster had spread the false accusation so quickly? Tell him I'll be there in an hour, Mrs. Gable. Don't let Sophia know anything yet. Meanwhile, hidden in a drawer of Regina Van Aster's scarves, the silver picture frame shone untouched, part of a calculated plan to punish the housekeeper whose daughter had dared to dance with Arthur Sterling. In the luxurious office of Sterling Enterprises, Arthur was signing some documents when his cell phone rang. It was Vincent. Sir, we have a situation. Mrs. Louisa Evans was fired today on suspicion of theft. Apparently a silver picture frame has supposedly gone missing. Arthur frowned, feeling a growing unease. An interesting coincidence, right after the ball. Find out more, Vincent. I want to know exactly what happened, and keep in touch with the family discreetly. After hanging up, the businessman walked to the window, observing the New York skyline with a renewed gaze. For the first time in years, he felt the urge to act, to get involved. Sophia's simple and courageous gesture had awakened something he thought was lost forever. His humanity. Claudia, he called his secretary through the intercom. Cancel my appointments for the rest of the week, and schedule an urgent meeting with the Foundation's legal and financial departments. I have a new project in mind. In the Bronx, Louisa arrived home, exhausted and devastated, only to find Vincent Miles waiting patiently in the lobby of the simple building. The middle-aged man, with his discreet suit and respectful posture, seemed out of place in that environment. Mrs. Evans, my name is Vincent. I work for Mr. Arthur Sterling. He would like to speak with you and your daughter. Would that be possible? Louisa faced Vincent with a mixture of suspicion and fear. After the humiliation she had suffered at Regina's house, her vulnerability was exposed like an open wound. Allowing a stranger, even one representing a powerful man, to enter her life at that moment seemed too risky. Why does Mr. Sterling want to talk to us? She asked, holding her ground despite the circumstances. He was impressed with your daughter at the ball, Vincent replied with sincerity. And he heard about what happened today at the Van Aster mansion. He believes he can help. A glimmer of hope crossed Louisa's heart, quickly replaced by pride. She didn't want charity. She didn't need a wealthy savior. She had faced hardships before and survived with dignity. I appreciate the interest, but I don't need anyone to solve my problems, she stated, straightening her posture. Please tell Mr. Sterling it was kind of him to be concerned. Vincent nodded respectfully, handing her a card. I understand perfectly. If you change your mind, this is my direct contact. I'll be available at any time. As she climbed the stairs to her modest fourth-floor apartment, Louisa felt the weight of reality crash down on her shoulders. How would she explain to Sophia that she had lost her job? How would they pay the already overdue rent? The savings set aside for her daughter's education would have to be used to survive for the next few months while she looked for a new position. Mom! Sophia exclaimed upon seeing her, running to hug her. You're home early today. Mrs. Gable said a man was looking for you. Louisa forced a smile, stroking her daughter's curly hair. It was just an acquaintance, dear. Nothing important, she lied, shielding her daughter from the harsh reality. "How was your day at school?" As Sophia chatted excitedly about her science class, Louisa made coffee, trying to organize her thoughts. She would have to call former employers, ask for referrals, perhaps take on odd cleaning jobs until she found something permanent. Desperation threatened to consume her, but she couldn't afford to break down. For Sophia, she had to stay strong. In his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Arthur received Vincent's detailed report on his meeting with Louisa. "She refused any help, just as you predicted," the security chief concluded. "She's proud despite her difficult situation." Arthur smiled faintly, recalling the same dignity in Sophia's eyes. "Like mother, like daughter," he murmured, more to himself than to Vincent. "And what did you find out about the theft accusation?" "False, without a doubt. I spoke discreetly with another employee at the house. The picture frame never actually disappeared. Mrs. Van Aster hid it in her own drawer, a clear setup to punish Louisa for her daughter's behavior at the ball." A flash of indignation crossed Arthur's normally impassive face. That kind of calculated cruelty reminded him of the worst side of the business and social world he lived in. The same hypocrisy and lack of humanity that Helena had so despised. "Prepare the plan we discussed, Vincent. Leave no trace that identifies us. I want it to look like divine providence, not human charity." The next morning, Louisa woke up determined to start her job search. She left Sophia with Mrs. Gable and headed to Midtown, resume in hand, ready to knock on doors if necessary. After hours of fruitless attempts, she returned to the Bronx with diminished but not destroyed hope. Upon arriving at her building, she was approached by Mr. Peterson, the superintendent. "Mrs. Evans, I'm glad I caught you. I've got some news for you." Louisa's heart froze. Was this the eviction she so dreaded? "What is it, Mr. Peterson?" The man smiled, scratching his bald head. "The strangest thing. An envelope arrived for the building management this morning. Inside was the exact amount of your overdue rent, plus 3 months in advance, all in cash, with a note saying it was to settle your debt." Louisa blinked, incredulous. "What do you mean? Who left it?" "That's the mystery." A courier dropped it off and left in a hurry. Didn't leave a name or anything. The note just said to settle the overdue payments and advance the next 3 months for apartment 4B for Louisa Evans. Stunned, Louisa climbed the stairs, trying to process what she had just heard. Who would do something like that? The image of Vincent Miles and, by extension, Arthur Sterling came to her mind. Was it possible that, even after her refusal, the businessman had decided to help anonymously? When she opened her apartment door, another surprise awaited her. On the kitchen table were grocery bags filled with food: rice, beans, meat, fruits, vegetables, cleaning supplies, enough for a whole month. "Mrs. Gable, where did all this come from?" she asked, startled. The neighbor shrugged, as surprised as she was. "The doorman called me up saying there was a delivery for you. When I opened the door, the delivery guy was already leaving. He just left all this and disappeared." Sophia ran to hug her mother, excited. "Look, Mom, there's even that chocolate we only buy on birthdays." Louisa sat down, feeling her legs go weak. This couldn't be a coincidence. Someone was looking out for them, someone with resources and information. "Mrs. Gable, can you watch Sophia for a little while longer? I need to take care of something." With determined steps, Louisa went to the public phone on the block and called the number on the card Vincent had given her. "I want to speak with Mr. Sterling," she said, as soon as the security chief answered. "I know it was him. I need him to stop this immediately." An hour later, in a park in the Bronx, Louisa waited nervously. It was no surprise when Arthur Sterling himself appeared, wearing discreet clothes that still exuded elegance and power. "Mrs. Evans," he greeted her formally. "Thank you for meeting me." "This wasn't an invitation, Mr. Sterling, it was a summons," she replied directly. "You are meddling in my life without permission." Arthur nodded, not denying the accusation. "I only wanted to help. I don't need charity. I have my pride and my dignity." The businessman observed her in silence for a few moments, recognizing in her the same strength he had seen in her daughter. "It's not charity, Mrs. Evans, it's recognition. Your daughter gave me something I haven't received in years, a moment of genuine humanity. Besides," he continued before she could protest, "I know exactly what happened at the Van Aster house. It was an injustice motivated by prejudice and pettiness. Louisa swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to well up. "How could you know that?" "I have my resources," he answered simply. "The picture frame was never stolen. Regina Van Aster hid it to have a pretext to fire you, as punishment for Sophia's behavior at the ball." The confirmation of what Louisa had suspected deep down came as a blow, not because of the surprise, but because of the calculated cruelty of someone she had known for 5 years. "Why do you care?" she finally asked. "People like Mrs. Van Aster are from your social circle, not me." Arthur gave a bitter half-smile. "It's precisely because I know that circle so well that I know how toxic it can be. My wife, Helena." He paused. It was the first time in years he had mentioned her name to a stranger. "Always said that true nobility isn't in titles or bank accounts, but in sincere gestures and integrity. Your daughter reminded me of that." A silence settled between them, filled only by the distant sounds of the bustling neighborhood. Louisa studied the face of this powerful man who, surprisingly, seemed as vulnerable as she was in that moment. "I found out about your father, Sergeant Sebastian," Arthur continued, "a man of exceptional honor. I understand now where Sophia's courage comes from." "He taught her that reaching out when you're afraid is the greatest proof of courage," Louisa said, allowing herself a small smile as she remembered her father. "A valuable lesson," Arthur agreed. "Mrs. Evans, I can't undo what Regina did, but I can offer alternatives. Not as charity, but as a fair opportunity." As they spoke, in the Van Aster mansion, Regina received a call that would change the course of her plans. "What do you mean, cancelled?" she yelled into the phone. "The association's charity ball has been confirmed for months. I'm the chair of the organizing committee." On the other end of the line, the secretary from the Sterling Foundation sounded uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Van Aster. Mr. Sterling has decided to withdraw the event's sponsorship. Without the foundation's resources, we will have to cancel." "This is unacceptable," Regina protested. "There must be some mistake. I'll speak with Arthur personally." "Mr. Sterling is unavailable at the moment. He's traveling on business." Hanging up, Regina felt a chill run down her spine. The association's annual ball was her most important social event, the one that solidified her position at the top of New York's social pyramid. A cancellation would be devastating for her image. Days later, an envelope arrived at Louisa's home. Inside were 2 formal invitations to the Sterling Foundation's Grand Gala Ball, one of the most exclusive events on the American social calendar, held annually at the Plaza Hotel in New York City. Along with the invitations was a simple note: "Guests of honor, transportation and accommodations provided, RSVP requested." And most surprising of all, a box containing 2 couture dresses, one adult and one child-sized, both in a deep blue hue like the ocean seen from above, designed by one of America's most renowned fashion designers. Louisa stared at the dresses with a mixture of emotion and apprehension. To accept them would mean entering a world completely alien to her own, where she would be judged and scrutinized. To refuse them would be to deny herself and Sophia a unique opportunity for vindication. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of Sterling Bank, Arthur was conducting an extraordinary meeting with his directors. "I want you to acquire the mortgage on the Van Aster family property in the Upper East Side," he instructed calmly. "Pay whatever is necessary to the current lender, but do it discreetly through one of our subsidiaries." The executives exchanged surprised glances. It was unusual for the chairman to get personally involved in small-scale real estate operations. "Any specific plans for this property, sir?" the CFO ventured to ask. Arthur allowed himself a slight smile. "Let's just say I intend to conduct a thorough audit of the payments and contractual terms. If there are any irregularities, however minor, I want them dealt with to the fullest extent of the law." In the apartment in the Bronx, Sophia twirled delightedly in front of the mirror, admiring the blue dress that fit her small frame perfectly. "Mom, it's like magic. How did he know my exact size?" Louisa smiled, holding the RSVP card she had finally decided to send, confirming both of their attendance at the ball. "People like Mr. But don't worry about that now." What Louisa didn't know was that, at that very moment, Regina Van Aster was receiving a formal notification from Sterling Bank informing her that her mortgage had been acquired by the institution and that a full audit of her payments would be conducted in the coming days due to detected inconsistencies. The silent war between Arthur Sterling and Regina Van Aster had begun, and its first moves were about to cause an earthquake in the foundations of New York's high society. Sterling have resources that seem like magic to us, honey. Do you think we'll see Mrs. Van Aster there? Sophia asked innocently. Louisa's smile wavered for a moment. Perhaps, dear. The week leading up to the Sterling Foundation's Grand Gala Ball became a whirlwind of emotions for Louisa and Sophia. Her private driver appeared punctually every day to take them to preparations, a final dress fitting, a session with renowned hair and makeup artists, even a brief lesson in formal ball etiquette. Sophia absorbed every moment with a child's natural curiosity, while Louisa oscillated between gratitude and discomfort. Arthur's initial anonymous kindness had transformed into something more complex, an invitation to enter a world she had always observed only from the periphery. "Mom, are you nervous?" Sophia asked the night before their trip, as they packed a small bag with personal items. Louisa smiled, stroking her daughter's hair. "A little, dear. It's all so different from what we're used to. Grandpa used to say that being nervous is just excitement in disguise," Sophia replied with the simple wisdom she had inherited from her grandfather. "He'd be proud to see us going to a gala ball, wouldn't he?" The memory of her father brought tears to Louisa's eyes. Sebastian had always dreamed of giving his daughter and granddaughter a better life, without ever compromising his principles. "He would be, my love, especially because we're going with our heads held high on our own merit." In his Park Avenue penthouse, Arthur was finalizing his preparations. Unlike previous years, when he attended the Foundation's ball merely out of protocol, this time he felt a genuine sense of anticipation. The presence of Louisa and Sophia represented something new, a break from the existential boredom that had dominated his life since Helena's passing. Vincent entered the office with a folder in his hands. "The latest reports on the Van Aster case, sir." Arthur nodded, flipping through the documents attentively. "So she's really having trouble paying the mortgage?" "Yes, sir. Apparently, Mrs. Van Aster has been investing beyond her actual means to keep up appearances. Her marriage to Mr. Edward Astor, who financially supported her lifestyle, ended 3 years ago, and she's been accumulating debt ever since." "Interesting," Arthur murmured. "We're talking about the same time I lost Helena, lives falling apart for different reasons." Vincent remained in respectful silence, accustomed to the rare moments when his boss allowed himself personal reflections. "And what about the picture frame? Did you get the proof?" "Yes, sir," the security chief replied, handing him an envelope. "Images from the residence's security cameras, which she is unaware exist. The system was installed by her ex-husband and is still operational. The footage clearly shows Mrs. Van Aster hiding the object in her scarf drawer and then accusing Mrs. Evans." Arthur examined the photos with a grave expression. "Perfect. Prepare copies for the event. I want everything on hand when the time comes." In the Upper East Side, Regina Van Aster was living through days of growing anguish. The cancellation of the Sterling Foundation's sponsorship for her charity event had been just the beginning. Now she faced the threat of losing her mansion after its mortgage was acquired by Sterling Bank. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by the luxury she so cherished, Regina took a call that only worsened her situation. "What do you mean I can't attend the foundation ball? I've been a guest for 10 consecutive years." The polite but firm voice of the Sterling Foundation's secretary left no room for appeal. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Van Aster. The guest list underwent a thorough review this year. Many traditional names were replaced by representatives of social causes supported by the foundation." Regina hung up, furious. First the sponsorship was cancelled, then the mortgage. Now the exclusion from the most prestigious event of the year. It was impossible not to see a pattern. Someone was systematically attacking her social standing, and she had a strong suspicion who it might be. The next morning, a limousine waited for Louisa and Sophia outside their modest building in the Bronx. The neighborhood watched curiously as the mother and daughter, carrying only a small suitcase, boarded the luxurious vehicle. "To LaGuardia Airport," the driver instructed. "Mr. Sterling's private jet is ready." During the flight, Sophia couldn't contain her excitement, pressing her face against the window to watch the world below. Louisa, on the other hand, tried to process the grandeur of it all. A private jet, a suite at the Plaza Hotel, couture dresses. The contrast with her daily reality could not be more extreme. "Why is he doing all this, Mum?" Sophia asked suddenly, as if reading her mother's thoughts. Louisa reflected for a moment before answering. I believe your dance with him touched something important in his heart, honey. Sometimes small gestures have powers we can't even imagine. In the lobby of the Plaza Hotel, Arthur received an unexpected phone call. Mr. Sterling, this is Regina Van Aster. Her voice, usually haughty, sounded tense and calculatedly humble. Mrs. Van Aster, what a surprise, he replied with polite coolness. I would like to request a meeting before tonight's ball. I believe we have important matters to discuss. Arthur smiled slightly, seeing through her attempt. I'm sorry, but my schedule is completely full. Perhaps we can talk during the event itself. I wasn't invited this year, Regina admitted, barely managing to hide her frustration. There must be some mistake. There is no mistake, Mrs. Van Aster. The Foundation's choices this year prioritized people of demonstrably sound character. The silence on the other end of the line revealed the impact of his words. Are you accusing me of something, Mr. Sterling? Merely stating facts. Now, if you'll excuse me. Before he could end the call, Regina played her last card. I know you're behind all of this. The mortgage, the cancelled sponsorship, the exclusion from the guest list, all because that little girl, my ex-maid's daughter, danced with you. I didn't imagine a man of your stature would let himself be influenced by cheap sentimentality. Arthur took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. You're mistaken, ma'am. My actions are not motivated by sentimentality, but by justice. By the way, how is your silver picture frame? Have you found it yet? The sudden silence on the other end revealed that the message had been understood. Regina realized that he knew somehow about her setup against Louisa. This isn't over, she threatened in a trembling voice. You're right, Arthur agreed. It isn't over. It will get much worse if you continue with this attitude. Now excuse me. I have important guests to receive. As he hung up, Arthur felt a satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. The clash with Regina represented more than a personal dispute. It was a confrontation between the values Helena had always championed, integrity, justice, compassion, and the cruel superficiality of the social world that had so suffocated them. In the afternoon, Louisa and Sophia were led to a private salon in the hotel, where a team of professionals awaited them for the final preparations. Hairdressers, makeup artists, and a fashion consultant ensured every detail was perfect. When she was finally ready, standing before the mirror, Louisa barely recognized the elegant woman looking back at her. The navy blue dress enhanced her tan skin and dark eyes, while the sophisticated hairstyle highlighted the natural beauty that years of hard work had overshadowed. "Mom, you look beautiful," exclaimed Sophia, equally stunning in her child-sized version of the same model. A discreet knock on the door interrupted the moment. It was Vincent, impeccable in his dark suit. "Ladies, it's time. Mr. Sterling requests the honor of escorting you to the ballroom personally." In the hotel lobby, Arthur was waiting. As he saw the mother and daughter approaching, something in his eyes changed. A glint of genuine admiration that did not escape Louisa's notice. "You both look absolutely stunning," he commented with sincerity. Sophia gave a small curtsy, as she had learned in her etiquette class, drawing a smile from Arthur. "Thank you for the invitation, sir," Louisa said, still uncomfortable with the situation, but determined to maintain her dignity. "The pleasure is all mine," he replied, offering his arm. "Tonight will be memorable, I promise." What none of them knew was that Regina Van Aster, defying her exclusion from the list, had used her connections to obtain a last-minute invitation. Determined to confront Arthur and defend her social position, she was heading to the Plaza Hotel at that very moment, with no idea of what awaited her. The hotel's grand ballroom shimmered under the light of hundreds of candles and crystal chandeliers. The American and international elite circulated in formal wear, amidst conversations about art, politics, and, inevitably, gossip about those present and absent. The entrance of Arthur Sterling, accompanied by Louisa and Sophia, caused an immediate stir. It was the first time in years that the businessman, known for his isolation after his wife's death, had appeared with a companion, and not with a socialite or celebrity, but with an unknown woman and her daughter. "Who are they?" guests whispered among themselves. "Some distant relative of Helena's." As they moved through the ballroom, Arthur made a point of introducing Louisa and Sophia to the most important figures present, always with genuine deference and respect. To the surprise of many, he smiled naturally, something he hadn't done publicly since losing his wife. "Mr. Secretary, allow me to introduce Louisa Evans and her daughter Sophia," he said, greeting an important politician. "Sophia is the young dancer who inspired me to expand the Foundation's educational program this year." Louisa observed everything with a mixture of fascination and caution. She felt the curious gazes, sometimes friendly, sometimes critical, but she remained serene, inspired by the natural way Sophia handled the situation. Across the ballroom, Regina Van Aster had just arrived, flaunting an extravagant red dress and jewels that seemed to scream for attention. Her eyes scanned the room until they located Arthur, and to her absolute shock, Louisa and Sophia by his side. "It can't be," she muttered to herself, feeling the blood drain from her face. Determined to confront the situation, Regina crossed the ballroom towards the trio. Her face alternated between forced smiles for acquaintances and an expression of contained fury she couldn't completely hide. "Arthur, darling," she exclaimed with false cordiality as she approached. "What a wonderful surprise. I didn't know you would be here tonight." The businessman turned slowly, his face taking on a neutral, polite expression. "Regina, I don't recall seeing you on this year's guest list." "Oh, there must have been some mistake. I sorted it out at the last minute," she replied, her gaze shifting to Louisa and Sophia. "But what an extraordinary coincidence. Isn't this my former housekeeper and her lovely daughter?" The condescending tone did not go unnoticed. Louisa felt her body stiffen, but she maintained her elegant posture. "Good evening, Mrs. Van Aster," she replied with dignity. Sophia, showing a maturity beyond her years, simply smiled politely without saying a word. Regina turned back to Arthur, deliberately ignoring the mother and daughter. "We need to talk, Arthur, about the mortgage, about the sponsorship, certain misunderstandings that can be cleared up." The buzz around them had subsided, and several nearby guests were watching the scene with poorly disguised curiosity. The confrontation between two prominent social figures, with the mysterious presence of a stranger and her daughter, promised to be the talk of the night. Arthur smiled slightly, as if he had been waiting for this moment. "Indeed, Regina, we have much to clear up, and there's no better time than the present, nor a more appropriate place than this," he replied, subtly raising his voice so that everyone around could hear. The ballroom, as if obeying an invisible command, gradually fell silent. The orchestra lowered its volume. Conversations ceased and all eyes turned to the small group in the center of the room. It was the moment Arthur had meticulously planned, the confrontation between two worldviews that would determine not only the fate of Louisa and Sophia, but also the very meaning of the Sterling Foundation from that point forward. Regina realized too late that she had walked into a trap. Her face paled when she saw Vincent approach discreetly, handing an envelope to Arthur. "How about we start by talking about a certain silver picture frame?" Arthur suggested, pulling some photographs from the envelope. "Or perhaps about the real reasons that led to the unjust dismissal of an exemplary employee." The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel had transformed into a silent courtroom. Dozens of gazes converged on the center, where Arthur Sterling, Regina Van Aster, Louisa, and little Sophia formed an unlikely quartet. The tension in the air was almost palpable, intensified by the orchestra's sudden silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," Regina replied, trying to maintain her composure, though a slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. Arthur held up the photographs discreetly, allowing only her to see them for the moment. "These images show you deliberately hiding the silver picture frame that hours later you would accuse Louisa of stealing," he explained in a calm but firm voice. "They are captures from the security cameras installed by your ex-husband, which are still functioning without your knowledge." Regina's face visibly paled. Her eyes darted from the photographs to Arthur, then to Louisa, finally resting on Sophia, who was watching her with a child's curiosity free of judgment. This is an invasion of privacy," she protested, taking a step back. "You had no right to access these images. Actually, the security system is legally the property of Mr. Edward Astor, who kindly authorized access when he learned of the circumstances," Arthur countered. He was particularly disappointed to discover that his family heirlooms were being used in petty schemes. The nearest guests began to murmur among themselves. Fragments of the conversation spread quickly through the ballroom, like concentric ripples in a disturbed pond. Louisa watched the scene with a mixture of vindication and discomfort. On one hand, the truth was finally coming out. On the other, Witnessing Regina's public humiliation, however deserved, did not bring her the satisfaction she had imagined. "Why did you do it?" Arthur asked, fixing his gaze on Regina's. "Why destroy the reputation and livelihood of an honest woman? What did Louisa or Sophia ever do to you that was so terrible?" Regina looked around, realizing she was surrounded by faces that had once admired her and now watched her with growing disapproval. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling before her eyes. "She didn't know her place," she finally answered, pointing at Sophia. "This girl invaded a space that wasn't hers, approached people she shouldn't have. And you," she turned to Arthur, "you allowed it. You danced with her as if it were normal." The silence that followed was deafening. The crudeness of those words, laden with poorly disguised prejudice, shocked even the most conservative attendees. Arthur took a step forward, his expression serene but resolute. "Sophia Evans is the granddaughter of Sergeant Sebastian Evans, a decorated military hero who saved dozens of lives on international humanitarian missions, a man who refused promotions and financial rewards to remain true to his principles of humility and service." He paused significantly. "While Louisa is the daughter of this exemplary man, a tireless worker and dedicated mother who teaches her daughter values that have unfortunately become rare in our social circles." Some older guests nodded in recognition of the sergeant's name, whose reputation had spanned generations. "As for Sophia's place," Arthur continued, "she was exactly where she was supposed to be that night, reaching out a hand to someone who seemed to need it, without caring about social status or appearances, a gesture that many adults present would do well to learn." Regina felt the gazes of dozens of people she had, until a few minutes ago, considered her peers. Now she saw something worse than rejection in their eyes. She saw pity. "You'll regret this, Arthur," she threatened in a final act of desperation. "You can't humiliate me like this and expect there to be no consequences." The businessman smiled faintly, without a trace of malice. "The consequences are already in motion, Regina. The mortgage on your mansion has been acquired by Sterling Bank, and a full audit has revealed irregularities in your payments and income statements. Legally, you have 90 days to rectify the situation or face foreclosure. You can't do that." "Actually, I can. It's just business, nothing personal," he replied, though everyone knew it was, in fact, very personal. "But I'm willing to offer an alternative." Regina narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "What alternative?" "A public retraction now, in front of everyone, followed by a formal apology to Louisa and Sophia. In return, the Sterling Foundation will assume your debt with the bank, allowing you to keep the property." The murmurs in the ballroom grew louder. The proposal was simultaneously generous and humiliating, a definitive test of Regina's pride. For a long moment, she stood motionless like a marble statue in her gaudy red dress. Her eyes scanned the crowd awaiting her response, finally settling on Sophia, who watched her without hostility, only with childlike curiosity. The internal conflict was visible on her face. Publicly admitting to framing a housekeeper would be devastating for her reputation, but losing the mansion would mean the definitive end of her social status. She began, her voice trembling. "I can't." Without finishing the sentence, she turned and walked hurriedly towards the exit, under astonished gazes. Her red silhouette shrank until it disappeared through the ballroom doors, leaving behind not just a social event, but an entire life carefully constructed on false appearances. The silence lingered for a few seconds, soon replaced by a growing buzz of comments and speculation. Arthur turned to Louisa and Sophia with an expression of genuine regret. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," he said sincerely. "It wasn't my intention to turn the evening into a spectacle." Louisa nodded, understanding. Sometimes the truth needs to come out, even if it's painful. At that moment, Sophia gently tugged on Arthur's hand. "Mr. Arthur, can we dance now?" she asked, with the naturalness only children possess. As if the traumatic events of the last few minutes hadn't occurred, the unexpected request drew a genuine smile from the businessman. "Nothing would give me more pleasure, Miss Sophia." With a discreet gesture to the orchestra, which immediately resumed a soft waltz, Arthur led Sophia to the center of the dance floor. Just like the first time at the school ball, the little girl guided the steps with surprising skill, while the powerful businessman followed, allowing himself a moment of pure joy. The guests watched, enchanted, some even applauding discreetly. The image was powerful in its simplicity, A man who had lost everything that truly mattered was rediscovering joy through the innocence of a child. Louisa watched the scene with restrained emotion when she felt someone approach. It was Vincent, Arthur's head of security. "Mrs. Evans, Mr. Sterling asked me to give you this when the time was right," he said, handing her an envelope. Intrigued, Louisa opened the envelope and found a formal contract with the Sterling Foundation letterhead. As she read, her eyes widened in surprise. It was a job offer. Not as a cleaner, cook or housekeeper, roles she had performed her whole life, but as the coordinator of a new foundation program aimed at supporting the families of military veterans. The proposed salary was several times higher than anything she had ever received, including benefits like health insurance, a retirement plan, and, most importantly, a full scholarship for Sophia's education at any institution she chose. "Is he serious?" she asked Vincent, incredulous. "Mr. Sterling has never been more serious in his life," the security chief replied with a rare smile. "He recognized in you the qualities he most admires: integrity, strength, and the ability to overcome. The Foundation needs those qualities far more than it needs illustrious surnames or social connections." As she processed the information, Louisa watched Arthur and Sophia finish their dance. The businessman bowed formally to the little girl, who responded with a graceful curtsy, drawing spontaneous applause from the guests. Walking back towards Louisa, Arthur seemed different, not just because of the smiles he now offered more easily, but because of a lightness in his step and a liveliness in his eyes that revealed a man awakening from a long, emotional slumber. "I see Vincent gave you my proposal," he commented, noticing the contract in her hands. "I hope you'll consider it seriously." "Why?" Louisa asked directly. "Why me?" Arthur looked at Sophia, who was now chatting animatedly with a renowned pianist about her music lessons at the neighborhood NGO. "Because your daughter taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. Because you showed dignity in circumstances that would have broken weaker people. And because," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "Helena, my wife, always told me that our foundation should be built by people who know both hardship and resilience. Theory without practice is empty." Louisa contemplated the contract for a few moments, reflecting on the unexpected turns her life had taken in recent weeks. "I don't know if I'm qualified for a position like this," she admitted honestly. "You have the only qualification that truly matters: character," Arthur replied with conviction. "The rest can be learned." That night, as New York City sparkled under a starry sky, three profoundly different lives converged on a new path. Sophia, in her childlike wisdom, had been the catalyst for a transformation none of them could have foreseen. 6 months later, the Sterling Foundation headquarters in New York was buzzing with activity. The new program for military veteran families led by Louisa had become an instant success, attracting national and international attention. In her elegant yet unpretentious office, Louisa was finishing a video conference with representatives from the Department of Defense. Beside her, a photograph of Sergeant Sebastian Evans held a place of honor, next to a picture frame showing Sophia in her St. Jude's Academy uniform, where she now studied on a full scholarship. As she hung up, she noticed Arthur standing at the door, watching her with a discreet smile. "It's impressive how you won General Torres's support in just one meeting," he commented, entering after she gestured for him to come in. "I've been trying to get an audience with him for years." Louisa smiled, now accustomed to her new role and the professional friendship she had developed with the businessman. "The general served with my father. He said any daughter of Sebastian Evans deserves to be heard." Arthur nodded, taking a seat in the chair opposite her desk, a significant reversal of social roles that, curiously, seemed natural to them both. "Sophia asked me to confirm your attendance at her piano recital next Saturday," he said, discreetly checking his calendar. "Apparently, I'm the guest of honor." "She won't stop practicing the piece she's going to play for you," Louisa replied. "She says it's a special surprise." A comfortable silence settled between them. It was no longer the awkward silence of their first meetings, but the shared quiet of two people who, despite their radically different origins, had found genuine points of connection. "I heard Regina Van Aster sold the mansion and moved to Portugal," Louisa commented finally. "Yes, after she refused the foundation's offer, she had no choice but to sell the property to clear her debts," Arthur confirmed. "Ironically, the buyer was Edward, her ex-husband. He plans to turn the place into a cultural center." Louisa reflected on the winding paths of fate. She felt no joy at Regina's misfortune, only a serene realization that, as her father always said, life has its own way of balancing things. Outside the office, excited voices announced the arrival of Sophia, who had just returned from school. The girl, now almost 11, burst in like a whirlwind of energy, still wearing her impeccable St. Jude's Academy uniform. "Mom, Mr. Arthur," she exclaimed upon seeing them. "Guess what? I was chosen to represent the school in the State Math Olympiad." Louisa stood up to hug her daughter, while Arthur watched her with genuine pride. Sophia had blossomed in recent months, not only academically but in confidence and maturity, without ever losing the spontaneity and kindness that defined her. "This calls for a celebration," Arthur declared. "How about dinner at that Japanese restaurant you love so much?" Sophia clapped her hands, excited, but then restrained herself, putting on a mock-serious expression. "Only if we can invite Mrs. Gable too. I promised I'd take her to try sushi one day." Louisa and Arthur exchanged amused glances. It was typical of Sophia to always think of others, even in moments of personal achievement. "Of course," Arthur agreed. "I'll have Vincent pick her up." As Sophia rushed off to change, Louisa and Arthur remained in the office, contemplating the transformation of their lives over the past few months. "You know, sometimes I wonder who helped whom in this whole story," Arthur remarked thoughtfully. Louisa smiled. "Maybe we all helped each other in different ways." On the wall behind her, a newly installed plaque displayed the phrase that had become the motto of the Foundation's new program, words that Sergeant Sebastian used to repeat to Sophia. "True courage is reaching out your hand when you are afraid. True nobility is recognizing value beyond appearances." That night, as they enjoyed sushi at an exclusive New York restaurant, a billionaire businessman, a former housekeeper turned executive, a precocious child, and an elderly woman from the community, an observer would see not the unlikely social combination they formed, but something much rarer and more precious, people who had found in each other the best of themselves. And when Sophia, between laughs, asked Arthur if they could dance again like at the ball, he accepted without hesitation. In the middle of the restaurant, under curious glances and indulgent smiles, the man who commanded an empire and the girl who had changed his life twirled in a simple, sincere dance, celebrating not just an unlikely friendship, but the rediscovery of the joy of living fully, with courage and kindness. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Sophia and Arthur has touched your hearts, showing how acts of courage and kindness can transform entire lives. For more stories that explore the human soul in its many dimensions, we have prepared a special playlist that you can find by clicking the link on the left side of the screen. If this narrative of overcoming and new beginnings moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us that special like that motivates us to continue. Also, share your own stories of life-changing encounters in the comments. We love to hear about our listeners' experiences. And remember, sometimes it's the simplest gestures that carry the power to change the world around us.